Hello, welcome to Who's On Next, the podcast that can get you a 50% discount at your local gas station. Today I have with me a woman who's been working in animation and art for many, many years. She is known as the creator of the 30-Second Bunnies. It is Jennifer Shiman.
Hello.
How are you
Billions of
doing
years.
today?
I'm
Bill-
I'm well. Sorry if I sound a little croaky.
Well, I remember
I
you had
might be a
told
little.
me, but when we were planning this, you got COVID, like right when I emailed you.
Yes, it's my very first case. I guess that is a triumph. And thankfully I'm mostly over it, but you will hear from my voice that I'm still a little creaky, croaky.
Let's say I've had it two times. I think I had it. I had it a third time, but I don't remember. I know I had it at least twice.
Yeah. I had really tried not to get it, and then
I mean,
yeah,
I'm
so
impressed you avoided it for 5 years.
I know, right?
That's impressive.
I was thinking maybe I was one of those people who's like super immune, but apparently not.
Say
So
like,
sad trombone for me.
oh yeah, no, because like I've been lucky to avoid it the last like 3 years, but I remember I got it at least like once every, like I got it the first year, and then I got it like I think like December of 2022, like
Ugh.
right after Christmas. I got it.
Yeah, that seems on brand for COVID.
I guess because actually before we started, I was saying because you're known for 30-Second Bunnies, which
Yes.
I guess I mean, it was going for a very long time, and I was you were asking me how did I find out about you. I was a fan of 30-Second Bunnies at an age I probably shouldn't have been watching it.
Yes.
I I 12, 13. I discovered it in like 2009.
That's great.
Yeah, and again, probably shouldn't have been watching it because
Yeah.
there were a lot of films that were adapted, and you didn't really hold back on some of the content that were in like the movies that you were adapting with some of them.
That's
So I
right.
guess
Guilty as charged.
yeah, no. So I it was one of those things where I was like, I'm 13. I probably shouldn't be watching this, but I kept watching it, and I followed it. I think was it a monthly release? I believe I forget what it was exactly. I think it was monthly for a period.
It was it was a long arc for an online, I mean, primarily online because it did get licensed for television and streaming, like on demand. And so, I was working on them from 2004 up until 2020. So that's like a very long, in different ways with different clients. And yet there was a point in those years that you were watching, like that you started to watch, where it was like I was making 12 a year. So yeah, like one a month on average.
Because I remember even being in like early high school, and like I remember like once a month or maybe every few weeks, I remember there'd be like a new one up. I forget what website it was on. Maybe Star's website. I know
They
that
did.
there was a website that hosted all the shorts too, but I forget what it was.
Yeah, it was. Stars created a website landing area for the bunnies, and they did host the shorts on their site as well.
And I guess well, I guess to get this started, what is it that got you into art and animation?
I've been crazy about animation and particularly that kind of goofball animation of the Chuck Jones era, Looney Tunes, Bugs Bunny, since I was a kid. So, ages 6, 7, I'd be, Saturday morning cartoons, eating cereal and watching Laugh Olympics, but certainly like then the I don't remember what it was called, but it was like the Bugs Bunny couple hours.
I think it was
And
just called like the Bugs Bunny show.
I think
Like
so
during
too.
yeah.
And I mean, that is really like that was my first, deep knowledge that I wanted to tell stories with animation and comics of, like I would read Peanuts. I'd go to our library coming out with the stacks of the Schultz, like the Peanuts collections, and like trying to. There's another kid in my first grade class who's always also trying to get those out of the library, and I'd be like, "Ha ha, I got here first," and you know, um, so that was absolutely an influence on me for the first half of my childhood. And then I feel like when I was a teenager, that kind of dropped off. Like I stopped with Archie, and I remember like trying to copy that Archie style, and then I just kind of left it all together until college, really. Like when I wanted to go to an art college, but my parents were like, "We're not going to pay for it unless you do liberal arts." And there was this cultural, belief, especially where I grew up, that if you get a professional career in art, you're destined for poverty. And whether or not that's like largely true, that determined, how where I was going to be able to go to school. And so, however, I went to Boston University for my undergrad, and they had a program that I was part of where it was interdisciplinary, and you were able to take the occasional class from a different college. Like you could, and so that is how I took my first animation class, was through their School of Communications. And that's when I was just like, what have I been, and I took like peripheral art classes throughout high school, like high school art and classes outside of school. But when I took that animation class, I knew that this is where it was all coming back to. Happily, also, I did get a background in business, which helped a lot as an entrepreneur, because I then was able to retain all my licensing rights and copyright to the bunnies,
Oh my
which
gosh.
is a big part of why I was able to expand their life cycle over such a long period of time, because of just smart business choices.
I was gonna say, because I remember them on Stars. Were they on other platforms too? Because I remember it was on Stars on Demand for a long time,
Yes,
like back in the day.
there was, after I was working with Stars, I also began working with a client called FearNet that later got swallowed up by NBC Universal. But that was going on for a few years, where I was working with FearNet to bonify select horror movies for their site and for my site.
It's actually
And
funny because I found an old bumper from that website a few days
wow.
ago.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
I because when I interview people, I'll like do some extra like digging or like rewatch stuff that they
Mm,
worked on, and I
mm.
found like a playlist on YouTube, and I found an old bumper from like I guess their old dead YouTube channel, like
Oh
of
my
the
gosh.
of the bunnies.
Yeah, it's so funny to come across those like today.
Well, and what was the thing that made you create the bunny shorts?
Well, I had been working, I've worked in a lot of different, I guess, business formats, like just generally, like workflow wise. I've been an employee in a large company, I've been working for myself, I've worked in smaller companies, and there was a time that I was working for a large, like, entertainment company in a small depart well, yeah, like a smallish department, doing animated e-greeting cards, when those were, now this was like circa the early aughts. And the thing about working at that company is that, and this was a very common practice and probably still is that if you made anything creative, generally the company you're making it for will own the rights to that content. and you sign off on it, and it's kind of unfair because you could have done some really cool things with the things that you worked your ass off at this other company. And so like creating the bunnies was sort of a reaction to that style of workplace. Was like, I want to make, first of all, my goal was always to tell stories of my own imagination, um, original content. Now, the bunnies came from the idea that I wanted to at least own the the rights to the content that I made, and hence, but also I wanted it to be something entertainment focused and something that incorporated pop culture in a way, in a fun way. And at that time, there were things going around. This was like a very, at the time, this was again sort of like a frontier of technology where social media hadn't really like fired up yet, and the kind of social sharing were these websites like
I know Newgrounds was a big
yes,
one.
exactly, thank you. And yeah, there were a couple others that I'm blanking on right now, but that is how you would share things before the big social media. Facebook and MySpace was just getting started then, like MySpace, and other sharing things. And so I was thinking it would be neat to have like a sort of almost like a magazine format style entertainment regular column that I could pitch to companies that might want to license that sort of thing, that I could do like a quote online column for some sort of larger, group. And, you know, I thought obviously if I'm using things in popular culture, such as movies, I need to make it a parody so that I can, move around it in a legally correct way. And, also succeed in entertaining and also incorporate the things that I love about animation, which is the slapstick, that kind of stuff. And that is when I started, like sketching up ideas, and that's where the bunnies sort of, why don't I have, like it's a summary of a film. Maybe it could be a review, but not really. Like if there are movies we've already seen, how could I make that funny and entertaining? And that's kind of how, I developed that concept.
Well, because yeah, because you brought up like companies basically like taking away properties from people when they sign over. I've known people who've pitched pilots and they aren't even allowed to like pitch their pilot to other studios sometimes
Yeah,
if they pitch it to
absolutely.
certain people. I know I've always heard a rumor that Disney has always had that where if you
Hmm.
like pitch a pilot to Disney, then they like legally own that pilot even if they don't
Hmm.
pick up the show.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah, and that's the thing that creators need to be really careful about is reading that fine print. If you're going to share, if you're wanting to collaborate, it might not be collaboration. It might be yeah, it's always important to read the contract, no matter how small.
had you ever tried to pitch like things like that to studios before? Like the Bunnies, had you ever tried to pitch like a show or like something of that nature to a bigger studio before?
Yes, I spent a lot of years uh, with my, at that time, writing partner and also best friend and also a bunny voice, Amy Forstadt. We did spend a lot of time trying to pitch original animated show ideas to studios.
Was there any like specific ideas you can remember?
It was all animation, um, and I haven't consulted with Amy, so I don't know that I could share any of them. But
Okay, so I was gonna
but
say
what
I
I
didn't know
can tell
if
you
they
is,
legally could.
yeah, I mean, but what I can say though is that often we would get input, like it was the process was very discouraging, I found, because you'd get in there and it was easy enough to get in there. They were definitely looking for stuff. But often, you would hear these myths. I mean, I think they're myths, but you'd hear these stories of people who walk in, they waltz right in, and they sell a show in the first 5 minutes of, of getting in front of people, and that this can happen, and it can happen to you if you have the right thing to show them. And so I had this idea that that might happen if our work was, quote, good enough, but really it was so arbitrary. And maybe that did happen to some people, but more likely, more often we would come away with feedback like, we're not taking, vampire babies right now, but maybe, if they were in outer, or we already have like outer space, you know, mice or whatever it is, time traveling, but come back, make these changes, bring it back, and maybe. And so, you'd go do all this work for free and then come back and they'd be like, well, we already have a property that's X, And um, so it was a good exercise in learning how to pitch and learning how to communicate your idea to people. That was one thing that we really got out of it.
Well, and with making bunnies, you were the primary animator, correct, for the bunny series, right?
Yes. I mean, I
Now,
was the creator of the whole thing.
right.
Mhm.
And I guess what was the major process for creating one of those shorts? Because with how many you ended up making, and again, all based on movies, and some of these movies being like over 2 hours long, like what was the process for being able to compress a film into such a short format?
Um, yeah, and at that time, I will say that I, as a creator, had a lot more time to make this happen so quickly. Because thinking back to being able to output one of these in like 4 to 6 weeks for one person is something that I couldn't do with my current commitments, which are family commitments. Like I'm a parent of a 13-year-old, um, and that has changed my time availability a lot. Even, so what I used to be able to do was work lots of long hours, um, and have energy more for more. So that said, it would be making a decision about which movie to do. And this is like thinking about like 4 to 6 weeks time. The first week or two would be spent developing and this turned into sort of an easy for me to follow formula over the years, but trying to decide on a movie that I could that really spoke to me and made it clear to me what would be funny about how to edit the major moments. And it all kind of originated in the experience of sitting and watching a movie with your friends and heckling the screen. And that's kind of where the voices came from as well. Um, those ideas is that's where it started. And therefore I had some pretty close friends. In fact, my now husband, um, and then husband, like from years back, I mean, the same husband, and a couple super close friends, including Amy and another dear friend, John Mathot, um, who, this is a side note, referred me to Erin Fitzgerald,
Oh
who I
my
saw
god.
you also interviewed.
I was
And
gonna say.
she did bunny voices for the first Pirates of the Caribbean buns in 2007.
Oh, she
Um,
did, or someone?
yeah,
Oh, the person
she
you
did.
referred. Okay.
Aaron Fitzgerald did. And
Oh my
my
god.
friend John referred me to her because there was no way I could do a British accent. um, and so happily, she helped out on that one and was fantastic to work with. But yeah, like originally, it was just me and, Doug and John doing voices like we might do sitting in front of the TV or, at the theater. Well, not in the theater. We'd probably get kicked out for that, but you know. But anyway, so that's how it originated, and then I would do the edits, and then I would do production, which was for me like hand drawing. I still really enjoy drawing on paper, and that is how I would do the animation with a light box. And then I would hand ink it, also with a light box, and then I would bring all the art into the computer. Now, also doing the voice track and writing the lines, that would happen first, like getting the voices done, and then bringing all that into the computer, I was using Adobe Flash, now Adobe Animate. And so Flash allowed me had a really good, the earlier version of Flash. I used like up until version 8. uh, anyway, and so was able to animate, bring it all together, color it, incorporate sound and sound effects into, and then by the end of those 6 weeks, that last week is spent doing quality control and cleanup and yeah.
Would you have to like watch the movie multiple times? Like, would you have to be like, all right, let's just like, what are the most important beats that we need to like do to get this into like such a short format? Like,
Yes, I would listen. I mean, I would watch it multiple times, and that was like that first week or so is what I would be doing, was watching it, taking notes, taking notes of the timestamp, like trying to figure out what the best way, what would make this the funniest reenactment? Like, how could I make this amusing to all of us?
I guess, was there ever was I actually with how often, like how many times would you normally have to rewatch a film to like be able to get each beat down for like the final video?
I would say on average it could have been anywhere from like 3 to 6 times, and some of them it would be more. When I did a whole James Bond bonanza,
Oh yeah,
and
it's
that
like
was like
15 different
24
movies.
movies.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was
it's
like a
like
lot of movies, and that was really hard. I love the way it came out, but boy, that process, that was a hard one
did
watching.
I was gonna say you actually had to watch all 24 movies to get like a beat for like each one.
I mean, I don't know that I had to, but I did. And like I definitely um because the other thing is like I hadn't seen all of those, and if I had seen some of them, it may not have been for a really long time. So I really wanted to make sure that I was doing justice to the films that I was bonifying.
Well, and what was the idea for the voices being like sped up? Like, was it just because it was funny, or was it just because like you thought it would add more to the yeah, it would just add more to it if you like pitched up the voices for everyone?
Yes, because it was bunny. I wanted it to be like a small animal voice, um, that would match the character.
Was there ever like a movie that you got very tired of? Like, was there a movie you weren't really like a bit like? I was curious with how often you rewatched a movie. Was there one you were just like, oh, I don't want to watch this like two more times?
I mean, I'll tell you, the human centipede
Oh my god!
was making me a little nauseous after a while. And I remember the song that I was listening to while I was doing production on it was this Justin Timberlake like mashup of Suit and Tie, and I loved that song. And yet now, whenever I hear that mashup, I can't not think of the human
I
centipede.
can't not think of that movie anymore. That song is ruined. That
I
movie's
know, I'm
ruined
so
that
sorry.
song.
It was a mashup, but yeah. So it's that's the like the most memorable incidents of that.
Well, and I guess again with how rapid fire a lot of those shorts are, with like how many scenes are in each one, how how quick would the voice recording process normally be? Would it normally just be like a couple takes, or would you guys have to do like multiple takes of some things?
Yeah, I feel like there were instances where we would need to do multiple takes. Generally not. Generally, in the name of fun and everybody already, there was nothing I really had to direct. Everybody really, and I think that's kind of what made it fun is that everybody knew what to do because everybody loves to heckle movies or like loves a movie and just loves the lines and loves saying them. And so, you know, generally, and also because it was in the spirit of fun, it didn't, there was less pressure on, it was more, it was more like technical stuff for sure. Um, it was stuff like trying to reduce popping or, making sure things could be heard correctly. Like that was the real, stylistically, everything was lovely, but to make sure that things showed up articulated. That was the reason we might need to do extra takes.
Well, and like I'd said earlier, with having to like rewatch a movie multiple times to get like beats, like how would you like basically write like a list of bullet points? Or like how would you really do it? Like when you would like plan one out?
Yeah, when I was note taking, I was doing a few things. I was trying to orient myself, yes, to like the overarching themes of the story and like the feel of the film and things that really struck me as significant. And I'm not really, I wouldn't call myself a film student. It was definitely something that increasingly with time that I looked for more. But yeah, I would need to remember beats of the story. I would need to write down things, the things that happened in the order that they happened, and also what of these things is going to be the funniest? And how can I like take liberties to make it even funnier? And then what are the moments that really strike me as, oh man, this is like a major moment of the film. Everyone will, has zoned in on this part, thinking about that stuff too.
Right, and I guess what because you did some movies that were like fairly popular at the time because you did the Pirates of the Caribbean and
Mhm.
you did the Twilight movies and you did the Harry Potter movies. What was it all 100% creative control, or did like Stars or like one of the companies you were working with, did they ever like give recommendation of like, hey, maybe we could do this because it's a relevant film right now?
Yes, for the selection, like after some, the selection of certain movies, we definitely collaborated on because sometimes it did correlate to things that they were showing, but I would have the final say as to whether or not I wanted to do those particular films. And so, but generally, like, we really did agree on like 99% of the picks. And so, yeah, there was a collaborative process in choosing which ones. And that's true of all the clients that I worked with.
Well, I think it's the interesting thing is that so many of the movies that were done have like even the more recent ones. It's just so interesting that like so many of the bunny shorts have like stayed relevant because they're still well-known movies, even like the more recent ones.
Yeah.
Like, well, even something like Twilight, which I mean,
Mhm.
not a well-liked series of films, but they're still well-known movies, which is
Yeah.
something I just find so interesting that it has stayed relevant for so long because so many of the movies are such well-known films with the
Yeah.
series.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and oh wait, let me check the thing. Okay, we got like 5 minutes.
All right.
Uh, I gotta check. Well, and I guess what was the really because the Bunny series started like really picking up. I'd say around like 2008 ish, like around that time, they started getting popular, and you were nominated for a Webby for
Yes,
the
I did
series.
win. I won two Webbies, the
Yeah.
People's Choice and the best online comedy short.
Well, I guess what was it like seeing the series? Like, was just how fast the series was picking up in the late 2000s? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, it was, I mean, it's been exciting, it was exciting from the get-go. And I was thrilled to be working on it full time over such a long period of time.
Well, I guess like was there do you know exactly like what it was like specifically that really started like picking up? Was there like what was the one like was there ever like one episode of the series that was like the one viral episode that you remember like started getting a lot more traction?
I mean, I think it was the Exorcist Bunnies that was the very first one that I had posted to a few places like a Newgrounds or um, Albino Black Sheep. That was
Oh
another
my
big
god, I haven't heard
community.
that name in years. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
yeah, that was one of the ones that was championing some of my other content. And when I posted The Exorcist Bunnies was really the one that was 2004 that started like a viral interest and response that led later that year to stars soliciting me.
Oh, okay, I
Um,
thought the Stars thing was in like 2007. I thought
it
that
had
was like
been going
2006
on
or
for the
7.
3 years, but yeah, late 2004 is where they approached me to bonify a few shorts for their Halloween marathon.
Okay, I didn't realize it was that early. I
Yeah.
had always thought it was like in like 2006 or 7 when the Stars deal started.
Yeah, I think like 2005 was when they licensed, a big bunch of them per year started then. And so it went from like 2005 through like, yeah, 2010, 10-ish, I think.
Was it E-Bombs World? Was that another one? Did you
Yes,
like I was
exactly.
going to say that you said
That was
Albino Black
another one of
Sheep
those,
and
right? Yeah.
immediately like E-Bombs World popped in my head when you said
Yeah.
Albino Black Sheep.
Yeah, those were the big ones back in the day.
Oh God, I wonder if I don't even I think E-Bombs World still exists, but I don't know if Albino Black Sheep still exists
Yeah, I think it
anymore.
is. I think so.
I remember You're the Man Now Dog was like another website I remember that was like
Yeah, that I don't know.
those were like old video sharing like meme websites but that I think that one was more like image sharing than it was like video sharing. So what I guess what was it like getting cuz you were getting invited to conventions in like the late 2000s. You were at South by Southwest, and
Yes.
again you won the Webby in the late 2000s. I guess what was it like seeing like just like getting this much of a boost in popularity for the series?
It was super exciting. I was thrilled and delighted. Um, so yeah, it was really like what I had been hoping for in terms of sharing with an audience. That was, absolutely. I loved making stuff for people who saw it and like adding some levity into whatever kind of day they may have had. Like that was a big um reason why I do what I do is to connect with people and share with people, and that is why I'm here is to share stories and share content and give people a feeling that might make their day a little better, like make them laugh or just make them feel good.
Well, and during your time making those shorts, what do you have like a favorite, or did you ever have like a select group of the bunny shorts that you really liked?
I have a lot of favorites. I really do love those first ones, like The Exorcist and Jaws, Alien. Um, I One of my favorites is March of the Penguins.
Oh my!
Uh, which cracks me up. I mean,
That might have been
I
the
just
first one I saw. That might have been the very first one I saw.
that was a family-friendly one. Um, and there was one of the more recent series that I did was more television episodes for a website called Prime Timer that was like a television news website. And I did an episode of The Twilight Zone with William Shatner, which
Oh
I
my
loved
God.
that one. um, and so, things like that. Um, yeah, there. It's hard to pick just one.
I was curious because I did look at IMDb, and I know IMDb is not always accurate with some things.
Yeah.
And I guess I was curious because I noticed there were two things listed, and one of them was called Britannica's Tales Around the World.
Oh yeah. I
And
don't. It's
I
yeah.
was curious as to what that was because there's not a lot of info about it from what I was able to look up.
Yeah, I before I started working on the bunnies, I had animated some interludes, like short bits for some other filmmakers, and I think that that is probably what they're referring to. And so those filmmakers had posted it on IMDb, and that's probably why it shows up. Like at little interstitials within other filmmakers' films that are unbunnies related.
Okay, so was it like because I'm seeing pictures of VHS tapes of it. Like, was it like a segment, like an anthology type thing, or like what? Do you know what it really was?
For that particular one, I can barely remember what I animated, but it was probably, yeah, like something that was inside their short film or,
It says segment Rapunzel on IMDb.
yeah, I'm, embarrassed to say I can't remember what that was that I animated.
I mean,
It
I was
had
gonna
to be
say
like in the, yeah,
I was gonna
it
say
was
looking at
probably like the,
IMDb, there's
mhm.
only like 100 ratings, so I feel like it's probably also something that probably isn't very isn't
Yeah,
very
it
well known.
probably happened in it would have happened probably between 2000 and 2002. That's my guess.
Oh, because IMDb says 93.
Oh, well then yeah, like that would have been even earlier. It would have been something that I did for probably like I lived in Chicago and it could have been for a Chicago buddy. That's probably what it was.
Okay.
I the very first thing that I animated for myself was in 96. And so I was doing animation for a studio in Chicago as a production assistant, but I made my own animation, like bartering time to use their equipment. Um, I had these childhood stuffed animals called Sace the octopus and Topsy the turtle, and I made my first animated short film was called Info Love, about this infomercial gone wrong. And at that time, I was also, yeah, I probably made something for a friend at that point.
I assume it was hand drawn animated, correct?
Oh, yes. Yeah, all my animation is still.
What, do you actually still have it?
The one for the Britannica,
No, no,
I
no.
don't.
The thing you were just
Oh, the
talking. The
Infolove?
yeah. Do you still have
Infolove,
that?
I do. I think, but what's really cool is that the film copy is living at the George Eastman Library in Rochester, New York.
Really?
They asked for it, and that is where it's being safely stored.
So,
And then
oh,
I had it on,
so it's just
yeah,
in their archive, like the film.
right. Yeah, the film is literally in their film archive. Um, and I did used to have, do you remember DAT, digital audio tape? I used to have a copy on DAT. I don't think
No,
I have
that
any.
I'd have to look. Wait,
Yeah, like I have no way to play the DAT version, so I don't think there's a video copy of it that I know of where, I'm not sure,
trying to see when
but
Dat
that
went.
took me like it took 6 years to animate that,
Oh my
and it
God.
was about a 5 minute short. Yeah, it took a long time.
Oh, I didn't. They were still using Dat up until 2005. I did not know they were even still using it that late.
Nor did I.
Let's say so that. Okay, so was it just I actually have never even like this isn't like a typical cassette from what I'm seeing. A
Yeah,
fierce
it was a little
compact
like a little
magnetic
mini.
tape.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's digital rather than that's interesting.
Right? Digital audio tape, I think was what it stood
Yeah.
for.
Well, and now the thing I was curious about is you primarily stopped doing the bunnies around 2020, and I guess was it just you just didn't really want to do it anymore, or did you just feel like you'd done it for long enough, or I guess what was the main reason you like slowed down on doing them?
Honestly, it was the pandemic. Um,
I had a
and
feeling.
being the parent of a kid whose school was going to be closing down, um, not knowing what to expect, I opted to be the pandemic parent. And in doing so, I didn't have the extra time that I ever, I mean, I didn't already have a lot of time as it was, but it meant that there was no way I would be able to have time to do animation, much less continue the bunny's legacy. So that is when I pivoted to what I'm working on now, which is a graphic novel called World's End Detective Agency, which is about a bear named Avery Bear who has to find a missing bag that turns into saving a town from the cult hero dragon, who is also her first client. And I've been working on that since late 2020.
I was gonna say I saw that when I was doing research, I saw it's like over 300 pages, right?
Yes, yes,
Now,
it is.
are you attempting to get it published? Like, how are you gonna go about releasing it?
Yeah, I think I'm going to try. I'm at the point where my first draft is finished, so it's completed. Like I have a mock-up, big paper mock-up of the penciled pages. I went through the editing phase, and now I'm working on the final draft, the final pencils. At this point, I am also working on finishing a pitch packet that I am going to use to submit to agents. Um, and if I can get representation, that would be neat. I'm going to continue working on it no matter what. So if it doesn't get published, it will get self-published. But it is an interesting process now, not only because of the state of various industries and the advent of unregulated AI, which is throwing quite a wrench into the works, and because um, there's just like lots of questions about the nature of sharing with an audience, um, and livelihood. Like, is livelihood possible from a project like this? I don't know. So it's been a long process because everything that I was doing prior involved using already created films, so it was a formula that while there were new um, original, I don't know, paths being formed from the edits and stuff. This story is coming completely from me, and that is something that I have less experience with is long format storytelling. Um, well, frankly, the Infolove animated short was totally me, so I guess that's not entirely true. But as far as like a long story like this, because I'm the author illustrator, and so I'm doing it all. And I'm curious how, what will happen. Um, but, and the other piece of it is that I've also gotten almost entirely off of social media on account of the lack of regulation, with like Meta, who, is in charge of Instagram or, and so unfettered AI is really concerning. But yet have I cut off my nose to spite my face. That is a question I cannot answer yet. It has certainly saved me a lot of time. It was a time suck, but it's also, it does feel like being disconnected in a way that may be important to marketing and promotion, but maybe not, like it's really hard to say right now.
Right, yeah, and I guess had you ever really wanted to do a project like this in the past, even while you were working on like the bunnies or like other projects? Had you wanted to do a comic like this or any other types of projects?
Yes, I really have. I mean, it's sort of been my one like my dream since, like that was really my dream has been to tell my own story and write my own comics or like make my own comic story, animation or comics. So, um, and it's also kind of the most challenging one because of how challenging it can be to just tell a story and then share the story. So, for sure.
Well, and I know you've also been doing you were doing web comics for a period on your you had your own website where you were sharing like little web comics or things like that. And I guess was that a similar thing where you just were having a good time doing that on the side while you were working on this project?
Yes, there was actually for a few years a world that I made that was very different that I even tried pitching as an animated series as well. Um, and that was, I would say, like 2010 to 13, 14, called Baldwin P. Lenenforth Ombudsman.
Oh my god.
Um, and Baldwin P. Lenenforth was a mild-mannered platypus who was keeping his world safe from the realm of the abysmal by providing bureaucratic ombudsman services to the demons of the realm of the abysmal and all the issues with bureaucracy that would arise. And it was so different from the bunnies. I mean, maybe not that different in terms of humor, but definitely like a complete 180 in my mind. And I really enjoyed working on that series.
was it gonna be was it gonna be like more adult oriented, or was it gonna be like kind of a teen age demographic? Like, what was the idea you were shooting for?
Yeah, I would say it definitely would appeal to more 16 and up. Um, I'm trying to remember if it was, yeah, I don't really think it was rated R that much. There might have been some minor cursing, but I don't think so. But yeah, it was definitely geared toward an older audience.
And like, and I just assume it was just you pitched it around and just no one like really was interested in the project.
Well, Disney was like, we have a platypus.
Well, and
And
there was I remember there was a show
yeah.
Disney had in the early 2010s called like Jimmy Two Shoes, and that was about a kid that went to hell.
Oh, really?
So yeah, it's not the same idea, but it was the
Yeah.
idea kind of like went through my head when you were explaining this. Is that you're
Yeah. Yeah, like, being a platypus was problematic. And like, there's a lot of bureaucracy in hell or like what goes on in hell stuff out there. And so it was really, it was really a thing that made me laugh. And that's kind of always my MO is like, am I laughing? Is it making me happy? Then I'm going to do it sort of thing. If it's not making me happy and I'm not interested in it, you're going to see it. You're going to tell. You could tell.
Oh, there's so many creators I've watched interviews. I remember the guys who made Powerpuff Girls talked about how like, oh, we just made it for us. We didn't really
Yeah,
make it with kids in mind. And I've seen that with so many animated shows and things like that where the creator was just like, "Oh, I just made it for me. I didn't make it because I was thinking about kids or I was thinking about a demographic. I just was like, I would want to see this show. So like
right.
that's why I pitched it." Like kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of the quandary of it if, as in the like advice to would-be creators, animators, artists, like it's hard to keep that essence of why you're doing it when you need to sell it, or like you need to justify why they should spend money on it if they're not going to make that money back. Like that is the, living in capitalism, like that's the quandary of being a creator. If you want to make a livelihood from your content, that is something that needs to be considered. Like you'll need to find a way then to make it saleable or work with those who would do that if it's not. And also like not letting those parameters like dilute the inner essence of what you're trying to share. And that I do not know the answer to how to do that. That is our like the bunnies, I think they're I don't know why that it touched people in a way that business couldn't ignore. Like, but it did. And I'm glad. I don't know if I could ever do it again. I don't know if I can do it with this project. I don't know, like I didn't do it at that time with Ombudsman. It's really hard to know the like how the scale of the appeal that your work may have for others. And I do know that like trying to tailor it to have that scale will kill it immediately. Or it will kill the fun for you. And then now, I mean, this is, I don't know if other people feel another way, but that is how it seems to me. Like anytime I've tried to, um, I don't know, like package it in a way to try to um, promote it, I guess, like is when it kind of shriveled up or, like it's hard. It's really hard to know because people have done it. They do it all the time. Um, but it's like that mythical, like this person walked in and pitched their idea and it sold immediately. It's like that same kind of like it's, you need to spend less time focusing on that aspect and more time kind of just being in the process. I think that is something I've learned, like being on the journey of that world, maybe have it be non-goal oriented, but maybe that also means that you're not going to be able to make any money off it. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you're going to need to bring in income some other way and work on the thing that touches your soul that you want to share, work on that in other circumstances. And, there's just a spectrum of how we share our work with other people.
Right, yeah. Well, it's I've seen so many people say that sometimes it was just like it lightning in a bottle moment for some people where it was just the right people at the right time made a project and it just happened to pick up. That's just like there's so many different factors as to like how something can become popular. I've seen things that I thought were great that should have been popular
Yeah.
and they just never picked up like
Yeah,
they should have.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Like
There's so much stuff. Yeah.
I've seen shows and I've seen movies that bombed where I'm like, this, I don't understand how this bombed. Like, I don't understand how this underperformed. Or I've seen shows, some of my favorite shows only ran like 2 seasons, and I could have totally seen them run like 3 more seasons. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that therefore, as a creator, we need to define, quote, success a lot differently than maybe culture does because there's so much joy to be had in the things that we make um, that have nothing to do with, like the metrics. And it might be okay to have a small community of 25 people um, really be touched by the thing that you made. That might be okay, or maybe there's a way to, um, get more eyes on it, but to have that be the goal can only lead to heartbreak. I think that the being in the process, like this is what I have learned after all these years of working on this type of stuff is like the being in the process and the the insights and the discoveries that we can make about the work we make. And of course, this also takes a really gentle inner voice. Like this takes getting with your inner critic and being like, you gotta lay off, man. You gotta cut it out. Like you're never gonna get rid of the critic, but you can turn down their volume and be like, look, we need you a little later in the process, but not sitting on my shoulder like my little marketing buddy every step of the way. Like that's just not conducive to creativity. And so,
All right, yeah, because I myself, like, I do this podcast and I do voiceover work on the side,
mhm.
and I've had a lot of periods over the years where I don't want to audition for things, or I don't want to do things, and a lot of the times I've had things where it's that little thing in my brain being like, maybe it's just because you're not that good, maybe it's this or this or this, maybe it's this or this. And I will admit, I've had this conversation with like two different people on this podcast like fairly recently, where I have just said I get more joy doing this like than I have doing voiceover the last couple years. And I think it's just because I have so much more control over
Mhm.
this than I do like auditioning for things or like seeking out other ventures, because I can control who I get. I can control, well, not 100%, but like we can control when the date of the podcast is. When you're auditioning for something, it's like you might get the role. There's like a 10% chance you might get the role. like
Yeah, right. Exactly.
and
Like there's yeah. Mhm.
Well, and it's the same thing with I've talked to animators and artists, and it's always the same thing of like, oh, you might get in that project. Oh, that thing you're working on might get popular. Oh, this. And it's just one of those things where it can be very demotivating to want to keep
Absolutely.
doing the thing that you're passionate about. But at the same time, I know so many people who are just like, you just gotta you just sometimes have to really force yourself to keep going sometimes, even if something you thought would pick up didn't pick up like you thought it would.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a pervasive part of our culture for creators as well. And it can be so arbitrary, like those things that we can't control between what we're working on and the audience that we want to show our stuff to, or there's like an arbitrary sort of gatekeeper level that I would argue is prevalent even now in today's content creation culture. Um, and it makes it very discouraging. It's hard to switch focus to the content and not thinking about, well, how should the content be? How should it be in order to, attain goal X, or, whatever that looks like. How do we define success? How do we define, and that's like something I think every creator needs to define for themselves and really like take a step back um, and think hard about what that looks like, because it will determine where you spend most of your mental energy and time. And that mental energy and time could be like directed into what you're working on.
Right, yeah. Well, it's like, I mean, content now has become so, I don't even know the right word. So much YouTube content, like the popular stuff, has become so artificial, I guess is like
Mhm.
the best way to describe it.
Hmm.
Like a lot of the people that I follow are not even in the most popular, and I'm not even saying it in like a hipster way. It's like they're like some of the most talented people I follow are people that like don't even have like a million subs on
Yeah.
YouTube. Cause like anytime I ever look at the most popular people on YouTube, it's a lot of the same. It's people ripping off other people, or
Yeah.
just it's just kind of content farm type stuff of like
Yeah.
we're gonna see these 10 people eat 50 ghost peppers in 20 minutes to see who lasts the longest, like that kind of stuff. And
Right.
I look back on old YouTube. I sometimes look at like old videos talking about like here's what the internet was like 15 years ago. And I remember that period when I was in like high school, like late middle school. And I do think about how like it's so weird how a lot of online content I feel like has pushed away so much from like the individual over like singularity, over like just it's now so much more corporate with YouTube stuff, or
Yeah.
even television and film. It feels so
Yeah.
much more corporate now than it
Right.
feels like it
Yeah.
did like a decade ago.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, I think what you said about content farm is like a really good description of how do we find how do we find those gems in a content farm culture, in a corporate content farm where, the name of the game is profit. How do we find those creators who are creating the stuff that we'd really like to see? We don't even know what it is yet, like and I think that in this era, it's going to be even more important for individual creators to get creative and dream about, that's one thing that we can do is daydream and envision, be the visionaries for how it could be and what we'd like it to be. I don't know what that looks like.
Well, I
However, I think it's our job as creators to team up and populate the current frontier, which I think is now happening again, with positive, creative power, human power.
well, it's what I one of the things I've noticed a lot more is I mean, I've always been a big animation person. That's always been my go-to for content, but I just always notice like animated content feels so much more creative, and just like I feel like I get so much more out of like animated TV and film than I do out of like most live action stuff, even online. I feel like I get with the amount of like creator driven animation stuff I've been seeing the last few years on YouTube. It's insane to see. I remember like I'm not a fan of the show. There was a pilot a few years ago called Has Been Hotel, and that got picked up for an Amazon Prime series because the YouTube pilot was so popular.
Wow.
And they got renewed for like 3 seasons after the first
Wow.
season ended.
Mhm.
And it's something where I just feel like that's the type of stuff where I'm like, that's the most creative stuff to me
Yeah.
now, is just like the way I see Netflix, a lot of the Netflix animated originals, and not even praising the company per se, but just like the shows I've seen companies like that put out, like Hilda, Castlevania, things like that. Just it's just so cool to get to see shows that never would have got made that long ago, like now, comparative to honestly, I think most live action stuff now is like very boring. I don't
Yeah.
really watch a lot of live action stuff anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There is a lot of great animation out there. Um, and yeah, it's nice to see companies like Netflix, for instance, taking risks.
But I guess to wrap this up, I guess I always ask people at the end of the interview, like, what advice would you want to give to people who are interested in your field?
Yeah, like, as I was saying, so creators are, I mean, creators of animation and comics, specifically these days are have a lot of challenges, like unregulated AI um, and being protective of their work, um, and trying to get their work in front of people. Like, I think one of the best things to do is look at your inner voice and make sure, like, keep a keep a solid inner compass, be really mindful of taking care of yourself, and joining a supportive community, I think, is really important. Um, and those are like those things then feed everything else. I think those are the two key things, like a supportive community and a supportive inner voice are the things that will see you through as a creator. Because you can skill build any old time, but if you've got a voice telling you constantly, this is fucking not going to work, or like you're never gonna, it will make it so much harder for you. So whatever it takes to um, be more gentle with yourself, whatever that looks like, will then help you the rest of the way, especially in such a trying time for creatives.